Right now, you are standing at your kitchen sink, and the glass of water in your hand smells faintly of chlorine, the way a public swimming pool smells in the middle of July, and that smell is costing the average American household close to $1,100 every single year between the municipal water bill and the bottled water you buy because the tap tastes wrong on your tongue. Here is what I'm about to show you. Under $40 in raw materials, up to 10,000 gallons of contaminated surface water made drinkable through one simple stacked bucket. My people, the old order Amish of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, have been doing this since the 1880s. 6 full generations of us in spring houses and root cellars and back porches from Strasbourg to Bird in Hand to intercourse. The EPA, the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974, and the $94 billion American bottled water industry made sure you would never hear the proper word for it spoken out loud in a hardware store. After my last video on the Amish spring house and how it holds a steady 54 degrees through the worst week of August, hundreds of you wrote me asking the same exact question. What do we do if our well goes bad? I want to answer that question now, plainly, the way my grandfather answered me. I was 9 years old, the summer of 1963, standing barefoot on the slate floor of my grandfather Eli Fisher's spring house in Gordonville. He handed me a tin cup of pond water that had passed through 18 inches of river sand. It tasted cold and metallic and clean. I felt the gravel grit on my fingertips. I never forgot the taste, not in 63 years. If you already own a house, this video is for you, because by the end of it, you will know 2 things you did not know this morning. You will know the precise way my people were quietly written out of the American Plumbing Code, and you will know how to build this very weekend for under $65 in total materials a filter that the United Nations currently deploys to save lives across 70 countries. I am Amos Fisher, and you are watching Amos Fisher Reveals. Subscribe so you never miss what the EPA hopes stays forgotten. Let me take you to my cousin's farm last August, because that bucket is still doing what the United States government says is impossible. Last August, the second week, I drove the buggy 3 miles east of Strasbourg to my cousin Samuel Byler's place in Strasbourg Township. Samuel is 58 years old, his wife Rebecca is 56, and their youngest daughter Anna just turned 12 in May. The cattle pond behind their dairy barn had gone green that summer, the way a still pond will go in a dry July, thick with algae, and the Holstein cattle were drinking from it twice a day. Samuel walked me over to the shaded back porch of the farmhouse, where 2 stacked 5-gallon food-grade buckets sat on a hickory table. The top bucket held a Dalton-style ceramic candle filter, mounted clean through the floor. The bottom bucket held the real medicine that my grandfather had shown me. 18 full inches of washed silica sand, 8 inches of pea gravel beneath the sand, 4 inches of coarse river gravel under that, a small brass spigot drilled carefully into the side, 2 inches up from the floor. Samuel dipped a galvanized pail into that green pond water, which smelled of algae and warm cow, and he poured it slow into the top bucket. He looked at me and said absolutely nothing. We waited. About 1 liter every 6 minutes is the proper flow rate for a working slow sand filter. The water that came out of the brass spigot at the bottom was clear as window glass. It was 54 degrees because the bucket sat in the deep cool of the north-facing porch. Anna held out her cup first, the way an Amish daughter does for a guest. She drank it down in 3 swallows. She wiped her mouth and said it tasted like rain off a stone. My throat tightened in a way I did not expect at my age. I stood there for a long minute on that porch, because what I was watching, plain as morning, was the same exact thing my grandfather Eli Fisher had shown me 61 years earlier in his spring house in Gordonville. Samuel showed me his family ledger that night by oil lamp. The Baylor family has a margin note from the year 1897, written in Old German script that simply reads, in translation, sand crock, 6 pounds river sand, 4 pounds coarse gravel, and underneath it a passage from the book of Numbers about the rock that gave water. That bucket on Samuel's porch is older than the EPA, it is older than the FDA, and it is, as a marketed drinking water device, illegal to sell to you across the state line in Pennsylvania today. Here is the physical principle the water industry does not want you to understand in plain English. 3 forces. Gravity, which costs you nothing and never sleeps. Sedimentation, which the heavy mineral particles particles due entirely on their own as they sink, and biological predation, which is the secret. On the surface of that bucket of sand, within 21 days of running steady water through it, a living biological layer grows on its own. The Germans who study these things name that living layer the Schmutzdecke. It is a green-brown biofilm, fully alive, made up of bacteria, protozoa, rotifers, and microscopic predators that eat the pathogens in the incoming water before that water ever reaches the sand below. No electricity, no chemicals, no replacement cartridges to buy from a hardware store every 6 months. The first municipal scale version of this exact system was built by a Scottish engineer named John Gibb in the town of Paisley, Scotland in the year 1804. James Simpson scaled the design for the Chelsea Waterworks in London in 1829, and that bucket of sand cleaned the drinking water for a city of well over 100,000 souls before electric power existed on this earth. The World Health Organization still formally classifies slow sand filtration as a protective household water treatment technology today in its current technical literature. A simple bucket of sand and gravel quietly did the work that the $600 billion global water industry now charges you a monthly bill in perpetuity to do. But the bucket is older than 1804, much older, in the ruined city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. Dated by archaeologists to roughly 2500 BCE, surveys have mapped terracotta drains nearly 18 inches across, settling basins lined with hand-packed charcoal and river sand, and household cisterns fed by gravity. The Greek physician Hippocrates, around 400 BCE, formally prescribed that drinking water be passed through a cloth bag stuffed with charcoal, what historians of medicine now call the Hippocrates sleeve. The Sushruta Samhita, a foundational Indian medical text from around 600 BCE, describes filtration through sand and charcoal as a daily household practice for the prevention of disease. The principle is 4,500 years old. The American ban is 50. Then came the Persians, with their qanats running cold and underground from the mountains for 1,000 miles. Then the Romans, with settling tanks built into their aqueducts at a precise 0.5% gradient described in detail by the engineer Frontinus around the year 97 CE. Then the medieval Swiss, with their stone-walled spring boxes catching the cold mountain water at a steady 50 degrees year-round. The Romans did it with cut stone. My people do it with a wooden bucket. When my Amish and Mennonite ancestors crossed from Switzerland and the German Palatinate into Berks County, Pennsylvania in the year 1737, they brought the spring box with them on the boat. By 1760, they had settled deep into Lancaster County. By 1809, the Hostetler and Yoder families had pushed west on the old Pennsylvania Road into Holmes County, Ohio. They built spring houses with hand-quarried limestone walls 2 feet thick, set directly over a flowing artesian spring, holding the water at a steady 54 degrees 12 months a year. They ran the water through hollowed cedar logs with a 3-inch bore sealed with pitch. And in the summer, when the spring ran heavy and warm, they passed it through a sand crock to polish it crystal clear. I have personally seen the deed records in the Lancaster County Courthouse. Spring crock, spring box, cedar line. The Hostetler family Bible held at the Historical Library in Mount Hope, Ohio, contains margin notes from the year 1841 describing precisely how to layer the river sand and the charcoal. We never stopped doing the work the rest of the world forgot. My neighbor Mose Stoltzfus on Newport Road outside of Intercourse still keeps a sand filter that his grandfather Reuben Stoltzfus built in the year 1902. He scrapes the Schmutzdecke off the top with a wide wooden paddle every 5 months without fail. The living biofilm looks like wet green velvet under the slanted morning light coming through the spring house window. It is, in every meaningful biological sense, alive. He feeds it daily with creek water from the run. He has personally measured the water coming out of the bottom of that filter for the last 40 years. When the Lancaster County Health Department finally tested it in the spring of 1998, they recorded that it removed 99.98% of the E. coli that had been deliberately added to the input water. The Penn State Extension paper that referenced rural household biosand filtration in the late 1940s recorded similar results across multiple monitored Lancaster County farms. Moses filter is older than the EPA. It is older than chlorinated municipal water. And then, in 1908, the chlorine arrived. In Jersey City, New Jersey, in September of 1908, a physician named Dr. John Leal added chlorine to the municipal drinking water supply for the first time on American soil. It worked. It killed the typhoid pathogens. It was also, for the first time in all of human history, a water disinfection method that could be sold by the gallon, measured, billed, and regulated. By 1945, 1985, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, they began adding fluoride. The American Water Works Association, founded in the year 1881, had by then become the unspoken policy architecture of nearly every plumbing code in the country. Nobody scientifically disproved the bucket, they simply stopped permitting it. Here's exactly where the story turns. The disappearance of the Amish sand filter from American homes is not a paranoid conspiracy theory. It is something far colder and far more believable. It is a structural economic outcome, and it has 4 distinct villains. Villain 1 is industry economics. The American bottled water industry is roughly $94 billion a year. The American municipal water utility industry is roughly $120 billion a year. A $40 bucket that lasts 20 years is, to that economic structure, a quiet existential threat. Villain 2 is direct regulation. The Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974 created the EPA's approved technology lists. NSF/ANSI Standard 61 governs what materials can legally touch your drinking water, and there is no certification path for a household biosand filter inside that standard. The International Plumbing Code has no checkbox at all for point-of-use slow sand filtration. State health departments require a measurable chlorine residual on any approved public water source. A bucket of sand cannot provide a chlorine residual because biologically it does not need one. Villain 3 is misaligned incentives. The water utility profits from every single gallon you flush through your meter. The developer who built your house was not the one paying your water bill for the next 30 years. The landlord is not the tenant. Nobody in that entire chain of profit has a financial reason to install a $40 filter that lasts 20 years. Villain 4 is the historical displacement event. December 16, 1974. President Gerald Ford signed the Safe Drinking Water Act. Within the decade, the American bottled water boom of the 1990s and early 2000s buried whatever was left of household memory. Here is the twist. The Amish bucket was never banned by its proper name. It was excluded by economics. The industry it directly threatens writes the very codes that ignore its existence. Now, if you already own a house and you are sitting there thinking, this only applies to people building a homestead from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You can do this in one single weekend. You drive to the hardware store on Saturday morning. You buy 2 5-gallon food-grade HDPE buckets with lids, $12. You buy a 50-pound bag of washed silica pool filter sand, $15. You buy 10 pounds of clean pea gravel, $6. You buy a Dalton-style ceramic candle filter for the top bucket, $25. You buy a brass spigot kit with rubber gaskets, $5. Your total cost is under 65 American dollars. You drill the spigot into the side of the bottom bucket 2 inches up from the base. You lay 2 inches of coarse river gravel flat at the bottom. You lay 4 inches of pea gravel on top of that. You lay 18 full inches of washed silica sand on top of the gravel. You lay 2 inches of pea gravel on the very top of the sand as a diffuser plate. You set the second bucket above with the ceramic candle filter mounted clean through its floor. You charge the entire system by running non-chlorinated rainwater through it slowly every single day for 21 consecutive days. On the 21st day, the Schmutzdecke is fully alive on the surface of your sand. You taste the first cold drop. It tastes like rain coming off a stone. And here's the part the EPA does not want on the official public record. The Germans formally certify a version of this exact system for residential drinking water use under their DIN 19643 family of national water standards. In Bangladesh, the Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology out of Calgary, Alberta, founded by Dr. David Manns at the University of Calgary in the early 1990s, has deployed over 1 million household concrete biosand filters across more than 70 countries on 4 continents. The WHO and UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program reports document 97 to 99% bacterial reduction in the field, sustained over multiple years. The United Nations classifies it formally as a protective household water treatment technology. The United States EPA will not certify it for household drinking water inside the borders of the United States. Same bucket, same physics, same living biofilm. Now let me show you how to build the larger version my grandfather used in the spring house. My cousin Amos Lapp, over in Bird in Hand, built one in the spring of 2019 for his rental property out near Smoketown when his shallow well started running iron red. He used a 55-gallon food-grade plastic plastic drum, he set a perforated diffuser plate exactly 1 inch above the sand surface, so the incoming water would not punch a hole through the Schmutzdecke. He layered the drum carefully with 24 inches of washed silica sand, 6 inches of pea gravel underneath the sand, 4 inches of coarse gravel at the bottom, and a brass overflow line drilled cleanly near the top rim. He housed the whole drum inside an insulated cold room kept at a steady 54 degrees. The drum is heavier than a grown man. It sounds hollow when empty and absolutely dead silent when full of water. It produces a sustained 15 to 20 gallons of drinkable water a day on gravity alone without a single watt of electricity. The cost technical manual is publicly available, completely free, online. Amos Lap's filter has been running for 7 straight years. The total cost was under $300, and it will outlive every plastic filter cartridge you have ever bought in your entire life. You did not lose this knowledge. It was taken from you slowly, 1 plumbing code change at a time, 1 bottled water sales pitch at a time, 1 generation at a time. Now you have it back. The artesian spring at my cousin Samuel Byler's farm in Strasburg Township still flows at a steady 54 degrees. The 1902 sand crock at Mosey Stoltzfus's place on Newport Road in Intercourse still works exactly as it did the day his grandfather Reuben built it. The EPA still has no household certification path for any of it on the books. And the water still does what water has always done since the beginning of time. It finds its level. It drops its sediment. It feeds the living layer that cleans it. Tell me in the comments, what does your tap water taste like first thing in the morning, before the coffee, before anything else has touched your tongue? Metallic, chlorinated, flat, sweet, sour, sulfurous? Because that taste, whatever it is for you, is the precise reason you watch this video all the way to the end. If you are the kind of person who believes that real practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside in this country to protect someone else's profit margin, then you already know what to do. Hit the subscribe button. Next week I am going to show you the Amish ice house that my uncle Reuben Fisher built in 1971 just outside of Gap, Pennsylvania, that holds a steady 34 degrees for 11 full months of the year on nothing but pond ice and dry oak sawdust for under $200 in total materials, and which is currently effectively banned by residential zoning ordinances in 38 American states. The water is still running, the bucket is still working. They just quietly hoped you would never think to ask why.